I'm Beth Bergmann, Chief Strategy Officer at Tele, and I'm here with Brooks Thompson, our Director of Emerging Tech. And we're going to sit down and talk about, from pilot to scale, what is actually working in retail and why pilots fail. So over the past 2 years, we've seen an explosion of AI pilots across retail. Think safety, security, self-checkout, customer traffic. The interest is real, but there's a pattern we keep seeing. Pilots fail because they stall. So the pilot is working, but we're never getting to scale. It's not failing technically. It's just we're not getting to the ROI, the business impact, shrink reduction, labor efficiency, customer experience, things that have been shared and what leadership wants. It's not materializing as expected. So Brooks, when a retailer brings this up after maybe kind of a stall or even a fear of I don't want to stall, what's typically happened?
Yeah, and thanks, Beth, for having me. What we usually see that's happening is that the first kind of key marker is that, did this happen in isolation? Did you try to keep it within the ops team or the IT team or the merchandising team, right? And the next thing is a next kind of identifier is, was this a demo? Was this a productized solution for the company? And then what were the model hits? Like, what were the targets that they were trying to hit? Were those metrics assigned to the actual company's metrics that they wanted to push forward? Or back again, was that isolation? Really, we kind of keep diving deeper after that, but there's really one key thing. Does it work in a vacuum? And then does it work in the real store? And we always think about when we do pilots and companies really spend time and focus on it, a lot of things can work, especially in new technology. Once it gets to a real store, are we talking about different POS? Is it in an aging infrastructure for cameras or bandwidth or whatever it is? And can that AI model that you've worked with scale across? And then the last thing is, really what we try to understand is, were those values and ROI metrics, are they able to transition to the store, right? To be impacted on real time, if it is real time, or do the changes get measured and monitored and then managed, right? Because you can make a change, but if you don't keep with it, then you don't make that ROI that you just signed up for. So it's definitely, there's a lot of things in this, but those are the common ones we see.
Yeah, so I kind of heard, right? Just really clear understanding of the use case, what you're trying to accomplish and the ROI there. Get all the teams engaged. Don't do this in a silo, right? Really, what are the store teams that are going to be impacted? Get their buy-in. Do a reality check on your hardware. Do you have what you need today to deliver, or is something aging and is going to cause issues? The AI doesn't struggle because the algorithm is flawed. It struggles because we know retail environments are complex. And most of them aren't designed with these AI workloads in mind. So we're really seeing that shift in technology in these environments and what it means. So Brooks, we recently worked with a large retailer. They had rolled out self-checkout and we're excited about that, but started to suspect that there was some shrink happening or increasing, and kind of pinpointed the scope as that issue. They couldn't quantify how much, where, when. So kind of talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, it's another one. It goes back to, it's not just emerging technology projects that you can't be in a vacuum. The team that we were working with wasn't being consulted about, operational improvement or asset protection, right? They were just deploying things and see what happens, right? And so then they started pointing fingers and kind of saying, hey, where we need to go from here? We needed to take a full step back and start to think, okay, if this is a hypothesis, well, let's treat this as a test, right? So we did an assessment of the 3 locations across their nationwide platform to understand, okay, what's going on at the scope, right? And we used some AI models that our ISVs had to kind of, or to actually analyze the footage and create a prediction model of what we think was being stolen. And this was both intentional and unintentional theft, which I think is very important because as you deploy something, even change for a customer will cause more impact. Over time, they learn, but what is that learning? What's that percentage? So we were looking at stores from 6 months of adoption all the way up to 18 months. We were able to identify that about 3.5% of shrink that was leaving the store was coming from self-checkout.
No, that's awesome. So really looking at, how you connect AI to measurable financial impacts. And when design infrastructures correctly, scaling them becomes more of that business decision, not a technology debate.
I think it's also a really important piece you said. A lot of these technologies, when you work with companies like we do with NVIDIA and all of the Intel and all these companies do these vetting formats. To your earlier point, Beth, the technology does work. It just doesn't work with your specific environment, right? I think those are the things that we need to figure out through piloting rather than does the AI work, right? Those are because one works in a vacuum and one won't scale, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the retail environment. It is not a greenfield. Most brands out there are probably retrofitting older stores, like doing refreshes, remodels. So how do we approach that differently? What does Tele do when we walk into these opportunities to really lay out the success formula?
Yeah, and so we had a tool that's been developed, that's kind of innate to Tele, where we talk about a workshop, right? We're trying to go in. We start with technology, right? What is your tech stack currently? I know this is infrastructure conversations, but what's in there? We really want to try to make sure that we don't take a bunch of steps and then realize late that we can't scale or that there isn't a roadmap for scale. So we need to talk about that stuff first. Once we understand that, then we really go into talking about the use cases and the compute and all of that kind of stuff that you need to make these happen. How does this blend within your kind of roadmap over the next year to 2 years? And then we can shift into developing those ROI models that will then prove out the value for those pieces that we just spoke of. I think the thing that a lot of people do is they start with the AI review first, and they get excited about stuff and they want to move forward. And like we are saying, the Vision AI solutions or AI in general, they work, right? But is it working with what you need it to do and how the flexibility of that? And as a previous retailer, retailers can be very, very flexible, but also there's a lot of challenges to being flexible because it's what's on the roadmap, what's already been purchased, what's in there currently. All of those types of things need to be taken into consideration. And then that can then be predicted for an AI model that will work for you.
Yeah, no, that's really good insights. And yes, you used to work in the technology department of a major grocer. So you have that on the floor, hands-on experience,
Yes.
the good and the bad, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. Been there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit beyond obvious use cases. We know a couple are definitely clear driving ROI, shrink, queue lines, you don't want to lose customers. Where else are you seeing retailers win with AI pilots and use cases?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've seen sort of a couple of different models. Like a few years ago, it was pinpoint solutions. Get in, solve the pinpoint solution. Then it kind of, over the last, about 2 years ago, it kind of went to this platform model. Can we solve everything with one company? What we're starting to really see right now is solutions that can be adopted and integrated to the existing solutions. So how powerful is your API? Are you using easily communicated and shared data across things? From the actual use case though, we're seeing things still, the big one is at the checkout, right? And so we're not talking about just walk out technology or anything. We're talking about validation of what's leaving the store when it's going out. Because you're seeing shrink, you're seeing labor optimization in those areas. But I think one of the things is anything that has labor use cases is going to kind of rise up, right? To the top. And the reason that is, for a retailer, labor is your number one controllable expense. That's same in QSR, it's same everywhere, right? And so if you can optimize and you can take tasks away, or you can improve their operation so that they don't need those, then those are the ones that are really going to stand out above the rest. I will tell you, the one that's kind of popping off in 2026 is labor optimization. But how you actually deploy the labor depended on your labor model that you predicted. So if you have labor planned hours and then labor actual hours, what is actually happening in your store? Are you seeing the lifts that you need when you make an investment in a certain area? Because once again, we get back to change. Change is very difficult, and people sometimes revert right back to what they were doing before, which then can negatively impact sales and operations and measurement. And so I actually just had somebody tell me it was the 3 M's. I thought it was really interesting: measure, monitor, and then manage. And so unless you do all 3 of those, change doesn't really take hold.
Yeah, I would actually say maybe we call it 4 N's, mindset as well.
Yeah.
Because I, for what I've seen, what you've shared with me, success and lack of moving to scale is really, mindset is separating pilots that scale and those who stall. If retailers aren't treating it like pilots, like proof of concepts, right? You're going to delay in future deployments. Anything else you might want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, leadership adoption is super important. I think more than leadership being able to approve everything, it's more aligning on what you're trying to achieve, right? And so if the goal is trying to achieve this certain metric, then whatever the answer is, whatever technology it is, will be adopted and supported, rather than doing something to help an individual vertical, right? I think one last thing I'll talk about for use cases in the kind of edge case, like using edge hardware, one of the biggest areas we're seeing right now is distribution and manufacturing. So DCs are investing heavily in technology. You have a massive amount of impact that you can create in a DC versus a store where it's a much smaller impact. So those investments then can be shared across, so they're more easily scaled. There's usually less of them. And so the solutions we're seeing are like optimization and path tracking of trucks and where are they. I used to work at FedEx as well, and you lose a truck, you actually lose trucks in those DCs. Where are they? How did they come in? How long did it take to get out of the parking lot into or the road into the parking lot? All of those types of things. And then the last one that's kind of always been there, but is kind of challenging, is inventory. Inventory is kind of the whole grail. Right now, it's being really successfully deployed in some companies with RFID. But if it could be done with just vision, that would be the holy grail. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, Brooks, I appreciate the time in the chat today. If I'm going to summarize or close it, kind of what I heard from you is, vision AI isn't necessarily difficult because the technology or the software doesn't work. It's difficult because retail is operationally complex. You've got legacy systems, you've got labor constraints and challenges, and also just competing priorities against different teams. So the retailers that are winning with AI, they aren't running more pilots. They're designing for scale before they even call it a pilot, making sure the teams are engaged and really building towards that bigger level vision or North Star. And so I think that's really what to bring home is, don't just trial everything. Be purposeful, intentional, understand your environments, and then bring the right partners to the table to help you execute your success.
100% agreed. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Brooks.
Thank you.